The town killed my family 15 years ago. Not bandits, the town itself. Its silence, its cowardice, its greed. I didn't come back for revenge. I came back for the truth. But in the dusty streets of Copper Ridge, truth and blood are the same thing. What's the saying? Oh, well, howdy, stranger. Old Jack at your service. Though the only service I've got is flapping my gums and telling, you're here to hear a story. So lean in. The desert sun hammered down like the judgment of an angry god when Cole Hartman rode into Copper Ridge for the first time in 15 years. Dust swirled around his horse's hooves, painting the air with memories he'd tried to bury beneath whiskey and wandering. The town looked smaller than he remembered, dirtier, like hope had packed its bags and headed east with the last honest man. Cole pulled his black stallion to a stop in front of Murphy's saloon, the same weathered building where his father used to drink away the pain of losing the ranch, the same place where Cole had sworn on his 16th birthday that he'd never set foot again. But promises made by boys don't hold much weight when the devil comes calling with unfinished business. His reflection stared back from the saloon's grimy windows, lean face weathered by sun and regret, gray eyes that had seen too much violence, a scar running from his left temple to his jaw, courtesy of the Brennan brothers and their farewell gift 15 years ago. Cole touched the scar unconsciously, feeling the phantom pain of that night when everything he loved burned to ash. The saloon doors creaked open and a man stepped out, squinting against the harsh afternoon light. Cole recognized him immediately. Pete Murphy, owner of the establishment, though age had carved deep lines around his eyes and turned his hair white as winter snow. Murphy's gaze settled on Cole's face, traveled down to the twin Colts hanging low on his hips, and his expression shifted from curiosity to something approaching fear. Jesus Christ, Murphy whispered, his voice barely audible over the wind. Cole Hartman. Cole dismounted slowly, his boots hitting the packed earth with finality. Hello, Pete. Thought you were dead. Heard the Brennans killed you up in Montana 5 years back. Close, Cole replied, tying his horse to the hitching post. But not close enough. He straightened, his coat falling open to reveal the sheriff's badge pinned to his vest, tarnished silver that caught the light like a promise of justice. I'm back to collect what's owed. Murphy's face went pale. The Brennans, they ain't here no more, Cole. Moved on years ago. Town's different now. Peaceful. Cole's laugh held no humor. Peaceful. He rolled the word around his mouth like tobacco juice, then spat in the dust. That what you call it when murderers go free, when a man's family burns alive while the law looks the other way. His eyes found Murphy's and held them, steel meeting water, because I call it cowardice. The older man's hands trembled as he clutched the saloon doors. Cole, listen. No, you listen. Cole stepped closer, his shadow falling across Murphy like an omen. I spent 15 years hunting those boys. Tracked them through Colorado, Kansas, Nebraska, lost their trail in Wyoming, thought they'd vanished like smoke. But yesterday I learned something interesting. He paused, letting the words hang in the air like a noose. They're coming back, tomorrow night, and they're bringing friends. Murphy's legs gave out, and he sank onto the saloon's porch, his face the color of old newspaper. How do you know? Cole reached into his coat and pulled out a crumpled telegram. Because they sent word ahead, to their old partner, the one who helped them burn my family alive. His voice dropped to a whisper that somehow carried more menace than a shout. The one who's been living free as a bird while my wife and daughter screamed for help that never came. The saloon doors opened wider and more faces appeared, townspeople drawn by the commotion, their expressions shifting from curiosity to recognition to terror as they realized who had returned to Copper Ridge. Cole saw it in their eyes, the knowledge that their quiet little town was about to become ground zero for a reckoning 15 years in the making. Who? Murphy managed to croak. Who's the partner? Cole's smile was sharp as broken glass. That's between me and them. But here's what's going to happen, Pete. You're going to spread the word. Tell everyone that Cole Hartman has come home. Tell them to lock their doors tomorrow night and keep their heads down, Because when the sun sets, I'm going to finish what the Brennan brothers started all those years ago. He touched the badge on his chest. Only this time, it'll be legal. That night, Cole walked the moonlit streets of Copper Ridge like a ghost visiting his own grave. Every corner held memories sharp as knife blades. There, the general store where his wife Mary had bought ribbons for their daughter's hair. There, the church where they'd been married on a spring morning that seemed like someone else's life. And there, at the edge of town where the desert began to swallow civilization, the charred remains of what had once been the Hartman Ranch. The house was gone, of course, burned to its foundation 15 years ago and never rebuilt. But the stone chimney still stood, a monument to loss reaching toward stars that offered no comfort. Cole dismounted and walked among the ruins, his boots crunching on debris that might have been furniture, might have been dreams. He found their graves where he'd left them, 2 simple wooden crosses he'd carved with shaking hands while the ashes of his home were still warm. Mary Hartman, aged 28. Sarah Hartman, aged 6. Below their names, words that had kept him alive through 15 years of hunting. Beloved wife and daughter. Justice will come. Cole knelt between the crosses, his knees sinking into dirt that had drunk his tears more than once. The desert wind whispered through the ruins, carrying scents of sage and memories. He closed his eyes and let himself remember the last time he'd seen them alive. Mary standing in the kitchen, flour on her apron, laughing at something Sarah had said. Sarah herself dancing around the table, her dark hair flying, her mother's eyes bright with mischief. The ordinary moment of an ordinary evening in a life Cole had thought would stretch forever. Then the sound of hoofbeats. Shouts. The smell of coal oil splashing against wooden walls. Mary screamed, "Cole!" Cut short by gunfire, the crackle of flames eating everything he'd worked to build, and his own voice, hoarse from shouting their names as the Brennan brothers held him at gunpoint, forcing him to watch. "Thought we might find you here." Cole's hand moved to his gun before his eyes opened. 3 men stood at the edge of the ruins, their faces hidden in shadow, but their intentions clear as starlight. He didn't recognize them, which meant they were either new to town or smart enough to keep their distance from the Brennan's business 15 years ago. "You boys picked a poor night for a walk," Cole said, rising slowly, his hands relaxed but ready. "Might want to head home to your wives." The middle man stepped forward into the moonlight, young, maybe 25, with the kind of cocky grin that usually got beaten off faces in hard country. "Ain't got no wives, but we got a job to do." He gestured toward Cole with his pistol. "See, certain folks in town are worried about your return, worried about what you might stir up." "Certain folks," Cole repeated. "That wouldn't be the same folks who helped the Brennan brothers disappear, would it? The ones who took their money to look the other way." The young man's grin faltered. "Don't know nothing about that. Just know you're not welcome here anymore. Time to move on, Sheriff. Find yourself another town to haunt." Cole's eyes moved between the 3 men, calculating distances and possibilities. They were spread out, professional enough to avoid bunching together, but amateur enough to think 3 guns gave them overwhelming advantage. They didn't know about the knife in his boot or the derringer up his sleeve. More importantly, they didn't know about the cold fury that had kept him alive through a decade and a half of violence. "I appreciate the advice," Cole said, his voice conversational, "but I think I'll stay a while. Pay my respects. Catch up with old friends." His hand drifted toward his gun. "Unless you boys want to discuss this further?" The young man's courage cracked like cheap leather. "Kill him." 3 guns cleared leather. Cole's Colts appeared in his hands like magic, spitting fire and death into the desert night. The young man took 2 bullets in the chest before his own shot went wild into the sky. His companions fared no better. One dead before he hit the ground, the other gut shot and moaning in the dirt. Cole walked to the wounded man, smoke still rising from his pistols. Blood bubbled on the man's lips as he tried to speak, tried to beg for mercy he would never receive. "Who sent you?" Cole asked quietly. The dying man's eyes rolled toward town. toward lights flickering behind curtained windows. "H. Henderson," he gasped. "Judge Henderson. Said you'd bring trouble. Said the town was better off." The words faded into silence as life left him. Cole holstered his guns and looked toward Copper Ridge, toward the house on the hill where Judge Henderson lived in comfort bought with blood money. Another name to add to his list. Another reckoning to balance the scales. He gathered the bodies and loaded them onto their horses, then sent the animals walking back toward town with their grim cargo. Let Henderson and his allies see what happened to hired killers. Let them understand that Cole Hartman hadn't returned as the broken boy who'd fled 15 years ago. He'd come back as something harder, something that didn't negotiate or forgive or forget. Tomorrow the Brennan brothers would return, expecting to find their old partner and a defenseless town. Instead, they'd find a trap 15 years in the making, and Cole would finally keep the promise he'd made over 2 graves in the desert. Justice was coming to Copper Ridge, and this time it wore a badge. Dawn broke gray and unwelcoming over Copper Ridge as 3 horses carrying dead men wandered into the main street, their ghastly burdens swaying with each step. Women screamed from behind curtained windows. Children were yanked inside by terrified mothers. Men clutched shotguns with trembling hands and wondered what demon they'd awakened by tolerating the sins of their past. Cole watched from the shadows of the livery stable as chaos erupted around the corpses. He'd been waiting since before sunrise, knowing the horses would find their way home like carrier pigeons of death. Judge Henderson appeared first, his nightshirt hastily tucked into pants, his face pale as chalk when he recognized his hired killers. Sheriff Tom Bradley came next, a different man than Cole remembered. 15 years ago, Bradley had been young, idealistic, the kind of lawman who believed justice came from doing the right thing. Now he was gray-haired, pot-bellied, and wearing the look of a man who'd sold his principles, one compromise at a time. "Jesus Christ, Marcus," Bradley muttered, examining the bodies. "What the hell were you thinking?" Henderson's voice shook with barely controlled rage. "I was thinking about protecting this town from a madman. Look how that turned out." He gestured at the corpses with disgust. 3 good men dead because you wouldn't handle this quietly. 3 killers dead, Cole corrected, stepping out of the shadows. Both men jumped like startled rabbits, hands moving toward weapons they'd never clear before Cole's gun spoke. 3 men who thought they could murder a lawman in his own jurisdiction. Bradley's hand froze on his pistol grip. "Cole, we need to talk." "I'm listening." "Not here. Too many ears." Bradley glanced around at the growing crowd of townspeople. "My office. 1 hour. Come alone and we'll discuss the civilized." Cole's laugh was bitter as alkali water. "Civilized? That's rich, Tom. Was it civilized when you looked the other way while the Brennans burned my family alive? Was it civilized when you let them ride out of town with blood on their hands and silver in their pockets?" His voice rose, carrying to every watching face. Or was it just profitable? The sheriff's face flushed red. "That's enough, Cole. You're disturbing the peace." "I haven't even started disturbing the peace." Cole's eyes swept across the crowd, seeing recognition in some faces, guilt in others. "But since you mention it, why don't you tell these good people what really happened that night? Tell them how Judge Henderson here paid the Brennan brothers to drive me off my land. Tell them how you conveniently found reasons to be elsewhere when my ranch burned." Henderson stepped forward, his politician's mask slipping to reveal the corruption beneath. "That's a lie. Slander. I'll have you arrested for." "For what?" "Telling the truth." Cole's hand rested on his gun, but casual but threatening. "Please try, Marcus. I've been waiting 15 years for an excuse to put a bullet in you." The crowd stirred uneasily. Whispers rippled through the gathered townspeople like wind through wheat. Cole caught fragments. "Always wondered." Knew something was wrong. Henderson's got too much money for an honest judge. An old woman pushed through the crowd, Mrs. Patterson, who'd run the boarding house when Cole was young. Her face was lined with age, but her eyes were still sharp, still kind. "Cole Hartman," she said softly. I was sorry to hear about Mary and little Sarah. Sorrier still when you disappeared without a word. Cole's expression softened slightly. Hello, Mrs. Patterson. It's true, then? What are you saying about that night? Cole nodded. Every word. The Brennans didn't burn my ranch for sport. They were paid to do it. Paid to make sure I couldn't make my loan payment, couldn't keep the land that Henderson wanted for his mining operation. The old woman turned to face the judge, her voice carrying the authority of someone who'd seen too much to be intimidated. Marcus Henderson, I've known you since you were a boy pulling girls' pigtails behind the schoolhouse. Your father was an honest man. Would have been ashamed to see what his son became. Henderson's face went from pale to purple. You don't know what you're talking about, you old bat. This murderer comes back to town spreading lies and you. I was there that night, Mrs. Patterson continued, ignoring his bluster. Saw the smoke from my window. Saw riders leaving the Hartman place, heading toward your ranch, Marcus. Recognized Tom Brennan's horse. Her eyes found Sheriff Bradley. And I saw you, Tom Bradley, riding in the opposite direction fast as your horse would carry you. Bradley's shoulders sagged. Mrs. Patterson. Don't Mrs. Patterson me. I held my tongue for 15 years, thinking it was just cowardice. Never occurred to me it might be conspiracy. She looked back at Cole. But it was, wasn't it? They paid you to look the other way while they murdered that sweet girl and her baby. The crowd's mood was shifting. Cole could feel it like pressure before a storm. 15 years of buried guilt and suppressed suspicions rising to the surface. Henderson felt it too. His hand moved toward the pocket where he kept a small derringer, his political instincts screaming that the situation was spiraling beyond control. Now listen here, Henderson began, but Cole's voice cut through his words like a blade. No, you listen. All of you. Cole's gaze swept the crowd, meeting eyes that had avoided his for 15 years. The Brennan brothers are coming back. Tonight, they think they're returning to collect payment from their partner, to split the profits from the mining operation that was built on my family's graves. His smile was sharp as winter wind. They're wrong. They're coming back to die. Sheriff Bradley stepped forward, his hand still on his gun. Cole, if you're planning violence. I'm planning justice. Something this town forgot how to deliver. Cole's eyes found Henderson's, holding them like a predator holds prey. But I'm a legal lawman now, Tom. Everything I do tonight will be by the book. Clean. Proper. The kind of justice you used to believe in before you let gold corrupt your soul. He turned to address the crowd directly. I want everyone off the streets after sundown. Lock your doors. Keep your children inside. What happens tonight is between me and men who owe a debt they can never repay. His voice dropped to a whisper that somehow carried to every listening ear. But when the sun rises tomorrow, Copper Ridge will finally be clean again. As the sun climbed toward its merciless noon position, Cole made his preparations with the methodical precision of a man who'd spent 15 years planning for a single night. He cleaned his guns until the metal gleamed like deadly mirrors. He checked every chamber, every mechanism, ensuring that when the moment came, nothing would fail him except perhaps his own mercy. And he'd buried that virtue with his family long ago. The town held its breath around him. Word had spread faster than wildfire about the confrontation in the street, about Mrs. Patterson's accusations, about the Brennan brothers' expected return. Shutters closed early. Businesses locked their doors. Parents gathered their children close and tried to explain why the streets they'd walked safely for 15 years suddenly felt like battlefields. Cole sat in Murphy's saloon, the only man brave enough to drink openly, while death circled the town like a vulture. Pete Murphy served him whiskey with shaking hands, the bottle rattling against the glass like chattering teeth. You really think they'll come? Murphy asked for the third time. They'll come. Cole threw back the whiskey, feeling it burn away the last vestiges of doubt. Tom Brennan's got a pride bigger than his brain. He won't let my return go unanswered. Besides, he thinks he's got allies here. Protection. Cole's eyes found Murphy's in the mirror behind the bar. Question is, how many allies? How many people in this town took blood money to look the other way? Murphy's face went white. He'd been asking the wrong questions, Cole realized. The man's guilt was painted across his features like war paint. Another conspirator. Another name for the ledger. Pete, Cole said softly, turning on his barstool. You've got something to tell me. I don't know what you... Don't. Cole's hand moved to his gun, not threatening yet, but promising. Don't make me drag it out of you. We've got history, you and me. Your old man gave me my first job, sweeping this place, when I was 12. Show me that respect means something. Murphy's shoulders sagged like a puppet with cut strings. It wasn't supposed to happen like it did, Cole. Jesus as my witness. Nobody wanted Mary and Sarah to die. But you knew what was planned. Henderson came to me, said the Brennan brothers needed a place to meet, needed someone to keep their horses watered and fed. Said it was just business, just about getting you off that land so the mining operation could expand. Tears ran down Murphy's weathered face. He paid me $50, Cole. $50 to keep my mouth shut and let them use my stable. Cole's voice remained steady, conversational. And when my family burned alive, when my wife and daughter screamed for help that never came, what did you think then, Pete? I thought I'd sold my soul to the devil. Murphy collapsed onto a chair, his confession pouring out like blood from a wound. I tried to give the money back, but Henderson said it was too late. Said if I talked, I'd hang alongside the Brennans. Said the town was better off without troublemakers anyway. Troublemakers. Cole tasted the word like poison. Is that what they call my 6-year-old daughter? Before Murphy could answer, the saloon doors burst open. A young man Cole didn't recognize stumbled inside, his clothes dusty from hard riding, his face tight with urgency. They're coming, he gasped. Saw them from the ridge. 6 riders, maybe 7, armed to the teeth. Cole stood slowly, his coat falling open to reveal the twin colts that had carried him through 15 years of hunting. How far out? 2 hours, maybe less if they don't stop to rest their horses. Cole nodded, then turned back to Murphy. Pete, I need you to do something for me. Something that might earn you a small portion of redemption. The older man looked up with desperate hope. Anything, Cole. Name it. I need you to get word to Henderson. Tell him the Brennan brothers are coming early. Tell him they're asking for their partner by name. Cole's smile was sharp as a blade. Tell him Tom Brennan specifically wants to meet with the man who helped them escape 15 years ago. The man who's been protecting them ever since. Murphy frowned. But Henderson wasn't, he paid them, but he didn't help them escape. Hell, far as I know. He wanted them gone as much as anybody. Exactly. Cole headed for the door, pausing only to look back. Sometimes the truth is less important than what people believe. And Tom Brennan's about to believe that Judge Marcus Henderson sold him out to a federal marshal. Understanding dawned in Murphy's eyes like sunrise over the desert. You magnificent bastard. You're going to turn them against each other. I'm going to let them destroy themselves, Cole corrected. Then I'm going to kill whoever's left standing. He pushed through the saloon doors into the blazing afternoon sun. Copper Ridge stretched before him like an arena awaiting gladiators. Somewhere in the distance, 7 riders spurred their horses toward a reckoning they thought they controlled. Somewhere in town, a corrupt judge was about to discover that his past had finally caught up with him. And somewhere between justice and vengeance, Cole Hartman prepared to balance scales that had been weighted against him for 15 long years. The ghosts of Mary and Sarah Hartman would finally rest. But first, their killers would learn what it meant to face a man with nothing left to lose and everything to avenge. The Brennan brothers rode into Copper Ridge as the sun touched the western mountains, painting the sky the color of dried blood. 7 riders in total, just as the lookout had reported, their horses lathered with sweat and their faces hard with the kind of confidence that came from years of successful violence. Tom Brennan led them, his bulk even more imposing than Cole remembered, 40 years old now, bearded like an Old Testament patriarch, hands that had murdered Cole's family resting easy on his saddle horn. Cole watched from the second-story window of Henderson's office, where he'd been waiting for an hour with the judge tied to his chair and gagged with his own silk necktie. Henderson's eyes bulged with terror above the gag, his expensive suit dark with sweat as he struggled against the ropes that bound him to his judicial throne. "Your friends have arrived, Marcus," Cole said conversationally, never taking his eyes off the street below. Right on time, almost like they knew exactly when to show up. He glanced at the judge with false sympathy. Shame they don't know their trusted partner sent word ahead to a federal marshal. Henderson made muffled sounds of protest behind the gag. Cole ignored him, focusing on the riders below. Tom Brennan was scanning the buildings with the wariness of a predator entering another predator's territory. His brother Jake sat beside him, leaner, meaner, the kind of man who pulled wings off flies as a boy and graduated to bigger cruelties as an adult. The other 5 were hired guns, recognizable by their professional alertness and the way they positioned themselves to cover all approaches. "Looking for their partner," Cole murmured. "Looking for the man who's supposed to guarantee their safety in this town." He reached over and yanked the gag from Henderson's mouth. "Cole, please," Henderson gasped. "I never betrayed them. I kept their secret all these years. Kept my mouth shut about what really happened." "I know." Cole's smile was cold as winter stars. "That's what makes this so perfect." Below, Tom Brennan had dismounted in front of the courthouse. His voice carried clearly in the still air. "Henderson, get your fat ass out here. We need to talk." Cole opened the window and called down. "Judge Henderson's indisposed at the moment, Tom, but I'd be happy to deliver a message." Every gun in the street swiveled toward the window. Tom Brennan's face went through several expressions: surprise, recognition, fury, before settling on something approaching respect. "Cole Hartman, heard you'd gone soft, become some kind of lawman." "Still am." Cole held up his badge where it would catch the dying sunlight. "Federal marshal, with full authority to arrest or execute wanted fugitives. That would be you boys." Tom's laugh boomed across the empty street. "Federal marshal or not, you're still just one man. We've got you outgunned 7-1. "Actually, it's 6-1 now," Cole replied. "Had to kill 3 of your advanced scouts last night. They were trying to prevent me from doing my job." The hired guns shifted nervously. They'd signed on to terrorize townspeople, not face down a federal officer with a reputation for violence. Tom Brennan felt a change in atmosphere, and his voice turned sharp. "Where's Henderson? We had a deal." Cole reached down and hauled the judge to his feet, positioning him in front of the window where the riders could see him. Henderson's face was purple with fury and fear, his expensive clothes rumpled from his struggles against the ropes. "Your partner's right here, Tom. Been having an interesting conversation with him about your arrangement. Seems the good judge got worried when he heard I was in town. Sent word to the territorial governor about your whereabouts." Cole's voice carried a note of false sympathy. "Afraid old Marcus decided his reputation was worth more than your friendship." "That's a lie," Henderson screamed. "Tom, don't listen to him. I never." Cole slammed the judge back into his chair, the sound of the impact carrying clearly to the street. "Now, Marcus, no need to make this harder on yourself." Tom Brennan's face was a thundercloud. 15 years of partnership, 15 years of shared secrets and mutual protection, crumbling in the space of a single exchange. The mathematical precision of Cole's revenge was almost artistic. Turn the criminals against each other. Let them destroy the very trust that had kept them safe. "You son of a bitch," Tom snarled at the window. "All these years, keeping your secrets, taking your money, and you sell us out the first time things get difficult?" "I didn't," Henderson began, but Tom's roar cut him off. "Shut up. Just shut your lying mouth." The outlaw turned to his men. "New plan, boys. We kill the marshal, we kill the judge, and we burn this whole damn town to ash. Nobody betrays Tom Brennan and lives to tell about it." The hired guns looked less enthusiastic about facing a federal marshal, but they were professionals. They spread out, taking cover behind water troughs and porch posts, preparing to turn the main street into a killing ground. Cole had anticipated this, had counted on Tom's pride and fury overriding his tactical sense. "One more thing, Tom," Cole called down. "Before we start this dance, you might want to know. I spent 15 years tracking you boys. 15 years learning everything about your operation, your hideouts, your contacts, your methods." He paused for effect. "Your weaknesses. What's that supposed to mean?" Instead of answering, Cole fired a single shot into the air. The sound echoed off the buildings like thunder, and suddenly the town erupted with movement. Men appeared on rooftops with rifles, behind windows with shotguns, from alleys with pistols drawn. Not many, maybe 15 or 20, but enough to surround the Brennan gang with a crossfire that would leave none of them alive. Tom Brennan's face went white as he realized the trap. What the hell? Turns out some folks in this town have been carrying guilt for 15 years, Cole explained. Guilt about looking the other way while my family burned. Guilt about taking blood money and keeping quiet about murder. His voice hardened. When I offered them a chance at redemption, they were eager to take it. Mrs. Patterson appeared on the porch across the street, her ancient hunting rifle trained on Jake Brennan's chest. "For Mary and little Sarah," she called out, her voice strong despite her age. Sheriff Bradley stepped into view at the far end of the street, his badge reflecting the last rays of sunlight. "Tom Brennan, Jake Brennan, you're under arrest for murder, arson, and conspiracy. Drop your weapons and surrender." "Like hell," Tom snarled, but his voice lacked its earlier confidence. The hired guns were looking around nervously, calculating odds that had turned decisively against them. Cole appeared in the courthouse doorway, his twin Colts gleaming in his hands. "Last chance, Tom. You can surrender and face a trial, or you can die in the street like the animals you are. Your choice." For a moment, the desert held its breath. 7 desperate men surrounded by an entire town's worth of suppressed rage and long-delayed justice. The mathematics of violence reduced to its simplest equation: surrender or die. Tom Brennan made his choice. "Kill them all," he screamed, drawing his gun. The street exploded in thunder and flame. When the gunsmoke cleared and the echoes of violence faded into desert silence, 5 bodies lay bleeding in the dust of Copper Ridge's main street. Tom Brennan died with his gun in his hand and Cole's bullet in his heart, his final expression one of surprise that justice had finally found him. Jake Brennan lasted long enough to crawl behind a water trough before Sheriff Bradley's shotgun ended his participation in the family business. 3 hired guns discovered that professional killing was different from facing an entire town's worth of righteous fury. 2 gunmen had thrown down their weapons and surrendered when the shooting started. They knelt in the dirt now with their hands behind their heads, guarded by townspeople who'd found their courage after 15 years of looking the other way. One sported a graze along his ribs from Mrs. Patterson's rifle. The old woman was a better shot than anyone had expected. Cole stood in the middle of the carnage, his gun still smoking in his hands, his badge reflecting the last light of sunset. Blood had been spilled, justice had been served, and the ghosts of Mary and Sarah Hartman could finally rest. But victory tasted like ash in his mouth. Nothing, not all the killing in the world, could bring back what he'd lost. Sheriff Bradley approached cautiously, his own weapon still drawn but pointed at the ground. "It's over, Cole. It's finished." "Is it?" Cole holstered his Colts and looked around at the destruction. 5 dead men, a town forced to confront its own complicity in murder. 15 years of hatred finally spent in a burst of violence that had lasted less than 2 minutes. "Doesn't feel finished." Bradley nodded slowly. "Justice never does. That's something I learned the hard way." His voice carried the weight of 15 years' worth of guilt. "I'm resigning my commission, Cole. Today. Soon as we get these bodies buried and the paperwork filed. Town deserves better than a coward who sold his principles for blood money." "What will you do?" "Don't know. Head west, maybe. Try to find some corner of the world where Tom Bradley's name doesn't carry the stink of corruption." The older man's eyes met Cole's. "What about you? You got your revenge. killed the men who murdered your family. Your badge gives you authority to go anywhere. Start fresh. Cole looked toward the edge of town, where 2 wooden crosses marked the graves of everyone he'd ever loved. I don't know either, Tom. Spent so many years focused on this moment. Never thought about what came after. He touched his badge, feeling its weight. Maybe I'll stay. This town's going to need a sheriff, and it seems like Henderson won't be available for judicial duties much longer. They'd found the judge dead in his chair, a heart attack brought on by terror and the realization that his crimes had finally caught up with him. Some might call it divine justice. Others would say it was simply the price of a guilty conscience finally coming due. Mrs. Patterson hobbled over, her rifle slung across her shoulder like she'd been carrying it for years instead of minutes. Cole Hartman, I want you to know, we should have done this 15 years ago. Should have stood up for what was right instead of letting fear and greed rule our hearts. You stood up today, Cole replied. That's what matters. Is it enough? Can a few minutes of courage balance 15 years of cowardice? Cole considered the question while the undertaker began the grim work of collecting bodies. I don't know, Mrs. Patterson, but it's a start. The old woman nodded and walked away, her shoulders straighter than they'd been in years. Around the street, other townspeople were emerging from their cover, faces showing a mixture of relief, shame, and something that might have been hope. They participated in justice today. They'd chosen to stand with the law instead of against it. It didn't erase their past failures, but it offered a foundation for future redemption. As night fell over Copper Ridge, Cole found himself walking the streets he'd once called home. The town looked different somehow, cleaner, despite the blood that had been spilled, as if the act of confronting its buried sins had washed away some invisible stain. He ended up at the cemetery, standing between the 2 wooden crosses that had anchored his life for 15 years. Mary's grave, Sarah's grave, the promises he'd carved into wood with shaking hands now finally kept. It's done, he said quietly. Tom Brennan's dead. Jake's dead. Henderson's dead. Everyone who helped them, everyone who looked the other way, they've paid the price. His voice cracked. I kept my promise. I got them justice. The desert wind stirred the sage around the graves, carrying scents of rain from distant mountains. Somewhere in that wind, Cole thought he could hear echoes of laughter. Mary's laugh, Sarah's giggle, the sounds of a life he'd never get back, but would never stop mourning. I don't know what to do now, he admitted to the darkness. Spent so long focused on revenge, I forgot how to live for anything else. Don't know if I can learn again. No answer came from the graves, but Cole hadn't expected one. The dead kept their own counsel, left the living to find their own paths forward. He touched his badge again, feeling its weight differently now. Not the burden of authority, but the promise of service. Not the power to take life, but the responsibility to protect it. Maybe that was enough. Maybe finding a reason to build instead of destroy, to protect instead of hunt, was the real victory. The Brennan brothers were dead, but Copper Ridge lived on. And as long as it needed someone to stand between the innocent and those who would prey upon them, Cole Hartman would be there. He walked back toward town as the moon rose over the desert, casting silver light on a community learning to live with its conscience. Behind him, 2 wooden crosses stood sentinel over promises kept and debts finally paid. Justice had come to Copper Ridge. Now it was time to see what peace looked like. See you around, my friend. I've got another story for you.